there, how are you doing? My name is Kanan. I'm CEO of Avvanz, and with me I have Siang, who heads up Asia for us. All right, and we also have Vince from our marketing team as well. Thank you for joining us. Today, the topic is company due diligence through our CDD Global. It's a very timely topic. I think those attending from Singapore, you would know what's going on. Every day there are reports on money laundering scandal. And recently, Avans was actually covered in the newspapers, Straits Times and Business Times, in regards to this, on how we can actually help mitigate the risk. So after that coverage, there were a lot of requests on how to go about doing this, how can we mitigate the risk, how can we look out for such problems. So that's why we pulled together this quite an educational webinar. Wouldn't be long. I think I've timed it for about 20-25 minutes so that we can take as many questions. So what I'd like to you guys to do is feel free to put up any questions in the chat or the Q&A so that we could constantly look at that and answer your questions as we go. So with that, I'll kick off, and Xiang will join me a bit later, adding some more information on this company due diligence. I think before we talk about it, I'll probably show you some examples to show why even CDD. So I think let's stick to the term. CDD means company due diligence or customer due diligence, generally CDD, right? So I'm going to use that word quite a bit. So let's get the abbreviation set so that you all know what I'm referring to in the webinar and why this is important and what kind of checks can actually be done. And then we'll show you a very Amazon style platform where you can quickly and easily do this now. So it's not a very difficult project to do actually. It's quite easily you can do this even right after this webinar. So like what I mentioned earlier, the Singapore billion-dollar money laundering scam exposed. I mean, I think you can see it's a very complex web of interconnected scandal, right? In fact, I think it's become even harder for the authorities to track this. So they're putting a lot of effort on this whole thing. Of course, not more than 100 luxury condos, GCBs, good class bungalows, flashy cars, jewelry, cryptocurrency, and even club membership. So I was actually invited to speak to address all the clubs, golf clubs and other clubs as well 2 weeks ago on how to mitigate this risk, because a lot of money laundering also goes into that. So it's not just your Chanel and Prada bags and jewelry, right? It's also club memberships. And of course, we all know the cryptocurrency. In fact, I addressed that a month ago in the Marina Bay Sands to a very large crowd on how to do CDD on companies before you invest in them, especially when there's a lot of crypto wallets moving around. How can you mitigate the risk? So this is one big one. I think some of you might be really affected by this. There's also others, right? And these scandals are not new, right? You also have like 22 years ago, there was Enron scandal, right? Complex accounting methods to hide your debt, inflate your profits, and then became bankrupt, right? Billions of dollars of losses for the investors and even the employees. Then you had the Wirecard fraud not too long ago, where it was revealed that almost $2 billion of cash balance did not even exist, right? And then the CEO was arrested and several deficiencies in financial controls. And I think nowadays, wherever you are, whichever part of the world you are in, whether it's the US or the Europe or Middle East, you probably have a lot of coverages of companies which with similar scandals, hopefully not to their level of to not their level of financial levels. Then the other one, you have your Wells Fargo 2016, where employees open millions of unauthorized accounts to meet sales targets. I think you would have even read something similar in the property insurance when people have very aggressive targets to keep their jobs. Then in Volkswagen, they actually manipulated the emission tests, right? Because everybody wants to appear environmentally friendly. Now they call this, I think they call it the green dressing. So everybody wants to dress up as very environmentally friendly company. So there's also scandals there, right? And obviously affects the reputation of the company. And if it's a listed company, it'll affect your share price, which means it's your if you're an investor or a shareholder, you obviously get directly impacted. Then about 20 odd years ago, another WorldCom, some of you as old as me might know, the younger ones probably might have heard of it or read about it, where there's accounting fraud, $11 billion. And in 2002, 11 billion, I think we just imagine the scale of what it represents today, building the inflation factor, right? So that also led to the company's bankruptcy and conviction of several top executives. Then, of course, the very famous Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme. I think there's even a Netflix show on it, on how he went ahead to, in fact, it's quite an interesting show, how he went ahead to show consistent high returns. But it's like a Ponzi scheme, right? New investors pay for the previous investors and all that. So that was also pretty scary. And that collapsed during the 2008 financial crisis. Lehman Brothers, very, very famous. Everybody know. I think some of you have done MBA. This could have been easily a case study as well. Filed for bankruptcy, again, risky lending practices, massive amounts of toxic assets. So we already know some of the examples of lack of due diligence, what happened. So why is it important, right? Let's look at risk mitigation. So one thing is, of course, you want to do mitigating risk. It helps you identify potential risk and issues associated with the company. So it could be your customer. You want to open up credit terms for them, or it could be an M&A, or it could be even a partnership. It could be a vendor that you're going to, or subcontractor you're going to engage. So I think you need to know what's happening on that, right? So financial risk, legal liabilities, operational challenges, what kind of compliance concerns you need to be aware of, so that it helps you with your informed decision making, right? You need a comprehensive DD on a company's financial health, operational capabilities, the market position, so that it helps you make these decisions in becoming a partner. And a lot of our customers today come in. I mean, M&A has always been there, but we also get a lot of customers before they extend credit terms, because some of them will just, especially in today crypto world, a lot of them do disappear overnight and then they don't pay. In fact, we also had some customers before like that. And if that becomes a bad debt for you, it's not good for your cash flow, which is why CDD is very important before you engage with such companies. In terms of transparency and accountability, obviously, before getting to a partnership, this will improve your transparency, right? So there'll be more accountability as well, especially when there are a lot of external stakeholders involved, like your regulators. Like in Singapore, you have your MAS, Hong Kong, you have the HKMA, you have your government authorities, and of course, the whole network of investors, which is why this transparency and accountability is important. And you want to prevent the frauds and uncover the fraud, embezzlement, like all those on-round examples we saw, the WorldCom, Ponzi scheme, or Madoff. So by thoroughly examining the financial records and transaction histories, you can identify any discrepancies, any potential red flags that may indicate fraudulent activities. It might seem very difficult, to do all these. There's a way to do all this quite easily. Then your value assessment, right? Especially when you're doing M&A, am I valuing the company correctly? I need to evaluate the complete assets they've got, the liabilities, the potential liabilities, even the intellectual property, the customer base. Is it real? The competitive advantages they say they have. So an assessment will prevent overpayment, overvaluing a company, and so that everybody gets a fair deal. Then you got a legal and regulatory compliance, right? This obviously you need to do it. It's not good to have. You have to do it. And conducting your due diligence ensures that the companies comply with all the regulatory requirements, could be ISO requirements, compliance requirements, all that. Then you have your operational compatibility. When you're working, before you work with a company, you make sure the DD is done. So you also have a good insight of the operations, the culture, the goals, so that you do not have any clash next time when you work with them. Reputation management, I've already shown you some high profile examples where the reputation was clearly impacted. So which is why you need to do effective DD to make sure that you avoid association with companies that will harm your reputation as well. I think you've also seen in the recent scandals where, because of the interdependency, countries and companies also get into the whole loop of negative publicity. That's the last thing you want for your organization. Synergy identification. Do I have the right synergy in terms of, do they have the same financial methodology, operational efficiency, cost savings? There's some examples of, I've seen companies trying to work together and then they realize that the way they claim the travel and expenditure is very different from the other company. Very simple thing, like for a 2-hour journey they were using business class tickets, whereas for the other partnering company they had a very strict more than 7-hour policy. So this kind of simple things, but you know what, the impact is a lot when it multiplied by all the people who are traveling, right? So that's why synergy identification is also important. Then, of course, a long-term success, a thorough DD contributes to a long-term success. So with the potential challenges and you talk through the risk upfront, at least you know who you're going to sleep with. So you can actually work collaboratively to address these issues. So you obviously want, of course, you can do whatever you want, but I'm also going to add a disclaimer that a due diligence exercise can never be enough. You could be spending tens of dollars, hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, but you know what? If you've already done some basic or even a bit more advanced, you're almost there. But whether it's a due diligence or a background check, it's never 100%. That's something I think you need to get it clear. But you know what? It's the more you do, the better it gets, right? That's how. So this is one area where size matters a lot, the size of checks. So what kind of checks you actually can do? Because this is not an exhaustive list, but I would say this is a common checks across all our Avvanz clients. So obviously you can do financial due diligence on the company or the individual. Legal due diligence, have they have any legal trials going on, any civil cases going on, operational DD, market DD, the overall management and organization level DD. The ESG now is a very big thing. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of window dressing, green dressing, they call it, synergy integration, customer supply DD, right? So these are the different kinds of checks that you can actually undertake on them. And to conduct, who are the people you're going to be doing? So we have a platform called the CDD Global, and we also have a platform called the Screen Global. So it's like going in, I order a book and a bag and a belt, and I choose what kind of book I want, what kind of belt I want, same concept. And then you check out and you collect information. The whole workflow is very similar, which is what Xiang will actually go through. So in a CDD, it could be with your potential business partners, could be your vendors, subcontractors, could be investment targets, could be investors, could be customers, channel partners, all of the different scenarios. You can cover anyone and everyone. In fact, we even have a product for a social media checks on merchants. So if you are a shop bag, or if you are a Amazon, or you're Alibaba, and you have a lot of merchants with no real companies, but they're selling products. I've had my fair share of cases whereby my goods never came, money went in, and I had to complain and do the whole process to track back. I'm sure some of you have that as well, which is why these platforms want to start doing some basic checks on them. They might not represent a company, so a company registration in Singapore they call it ACRA, or all these will not work. So, which is why you would need at least some level of open source due diligence or social media checks to really verify if this merchant is a real person or not. And there are a lot of other checks as well, which I'll let Xiang go through. So in the CDD Global, you have basic, standard, advanced CDD solutions. And then you also have in Screen Global, the individual level checks as well. So I'll let Xiang talk through some of these checks and what do these checks do through the platform. Xiang, over to you.
Thanks, Kanan. Appreciate your time walking us through the risk involved these days, right? It's never easy running a business, never easy working for an organization where you're in charge of risk as well. And essentially, this is where we like to come in and assist with, I wouldn't say eliminating, that's going to be impossible, but mitigating some of the risks which a lot of our clients have. Just wanted to walk through with you again, two platforms that we have developed, taking two angles, right? The enterprise angle, which is what this seminar is all about. But essentially, you can't just simply do risk mitigation at the enterprise level. People are the biggest risks or the biggest assets in any organization. Over time, we have seen that people are also the biggest risk in any organization as well. Without further ado, let me quickly now share with you and walk you through exactly the platforms that Kanan was alluding to. What you see before you is essentially what we like to call CDD, stands for Company Due Diligence. And this is the login page. Let me quickly log in. All right. So what you see before you, essentially after you log in, that Karan has kind of alluded to, is that the way we have built our platforms is very intuitive. If you've been online shopping, you understand the flow. You log in, you come in here, you choose what you need. Effectively, it goes into a bit of a shopping cart that you see right here, right? And when you're ready, simply check out and then await delivery of the product. In our sense, that product is the report that you'll be receiving from us. For company due diligence, as Kanan also have mentioned, we've got several options available, right? And coming in here and choosing what you need, you have your scope, the basic check. You have a drop-down list of the countries that we can do this basic check on, and exactly what is in this particular check.
Again, this is not a product demo presentation. It's actually a presentation to share with you what are the things we should look out for. So it could be either yourself doing it or through other partners. Of course, if you use Avvanz, fantastic. But if not, at least just focus on the content. What kind of things we should be looking at? So like a basic itself, you should look for all these things, right? Business scope, in-short employees and all that. So this is a very, very, very basic level check, right?
Right.
And by the way, if you happen to use a platform and you want to use Avvanz for that, if your particular country is not showing up there, you can write to us and we'll just keep on adding those countries for you. Yeah. So just focus on the scope. Yeah.
Correct. And again, like all e-commerce driven organizations, we try to be as transparent as we possibly can. And here you can see exactly how much it's going to cost you, the turnaround time, the scope, and so on and so forth. It's highly customizable, right? And then we've got global watch lists as well for businesses. And I'll jump into the Screen Global option, which is for individual, whereby we also have this, but specific to individuals, right? And then we got the company due diligence. And then you can kind of, determine your coverage, right? Several levels. You can do a deep dive into just one company or maybe two or more associates. Entirely up to you how you want to go into this. And this is one of our latest products, which or add-ons to our platform, which Kanan also has mentioned. Social media screening for merchants and shop owners. So we've been working with a lot of e-commerce, service providers, payment service providers, because the difficulty in ascertaining the legitimacy of businesses online is becoming a bit of a risk, right? But however, we've developed it essentially so that organizations actually get into relationships with their vendors and their providers with their eyes open.
Just to let you know, you might have heard of terms like KYC, KYB, AML. So this is what it is. I mean, KYC is a very generic term used for everything. It's basically KYC actually stands for know your customer, but in this case, it could be KYE, know your employee. It could be KYP, know your partner, right? So there's many. KYC again could also know your contractor, which is why it's a very generic term. But I think this is the real stuff, right? And then for global watch list and sanction is the one where it covers for your KYC and AML compliance. So I think the press has been recently talking a lot about every company needs to do KYC AML compliance, whether you're a realty company or a club. So this is what global watch list and sanction does, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Kana. Right. Yeah, again, I'm conscious of the fact that I shouldn't be running a demo. That can be done on a one-to-one basis. Again, very, very simple, After you've chosen what you need, all you need to do is kind of go into proceed.
And by the way,
That's
there are more checks coming in as well. We're also going to add more cybersecurity related products as well, whereby you can have a quick look of whether this company is even secure to work with in a cybersecurity wise, right? Internet wise. Yeah.
correct, correct. So, simply just choosing and then, putting the company name and you're good to go. And, again, checking on your orders, how do you do that? Maybe a good time is for me to kind of let you guys have a look at what a report will kind of look like.
So out there in the market, currently, if you want to do diligence, there's no real online platform like this. We're probably the first ones
Yep,
actually have an online platform to go about and order a check and retrieve a report. So I think that's something we're very proud of.
exactly. And it's just very straightforward and very easy to use. So that's behind our philosophy in developing all these platforms, right? And putting it online, not just for security sake. So this is kind of what a report would look like, quite thorough. And again, I don't want to get into too much on this particular webinar, but happy to walk through with you and send you guys a sample report so that you can differentiate basically what's a comprehensive report and what's a basic report. What are you going to be receiving from us? Cool. So the other platform that I wanted to share with you, which is also important as far as due diligence goes, and this is called Screen Global. Essentially, it is our background screening portal for individuals. And the setup is almost identical. And again, we can do a single sign-on for you, such that you don't have to be having two different sign-ons for two different platforms, right?
While
And
Sung
what's
is
interesting,
logging in, just one big difference I'd like to highlight. So CDD Global for company due diligence, you don't need an individual consent. You can pretty much do a CDD Global on all your vendors, contractors, M&A partners, whatever it is, right? But for individual level background checks, because of data privacy requirements, you do need to get a consent. And that's something the system will handle for you. And this platform, which Xiang is showing you, has won us a lot of awards as well. We have over 3,000 clients globally using this platform. So if you're in UK, for example, is GDPR compliant, and then the US FCRA. So you have different data privacy acts, like the Australia, you have the APP. So we are compliant with all those. So in fact, if you're from the UK, you can actually even log in through One ID, and if you're from the US, you can choose ID partner as well. So there are different ways to even log in.
so I'll simply log in and Screen Global is a bit more elaborate than CDD in the sense that we have a whole repertoire of checks, right? Um, Anywhere ranging from due diligence, financial integrity, and identity. So put the checks into four neat buckets, right? In due diligence, you've got stuff like adverse media. So this is when you will need to do individual checks, right? And then we showed you earlier there's a global watch list one also, KYC AML. But again, this is focused on the individual rather than the organizations themselves, right? We've got OFAC checks, sex offenders registry, because we work with a lot of educational institutions working with young children, criminal checks, criminality, civil litigation, and again here social media. And we've got three levels of social media, so you can even do a check in the dark web. So I like to tell my clients, you can run, but these days it's very difficult to hide. Yeah. So again, directorship, conflict of interest, drug testing, uh, financial, your usual suspects, bankruptcy, credit, financial regulatory. Then for the integrity portion, we kind of move away from well, the more database oriented checks, and we're moving into more manual checks, like education verification, right? For those of you who are based in Singapore, MOM has recently, as of 1st September, instituted the Compass program, right? Whereby, anyone applying for a job in Singapore, employment pass that is, will need to undergo pretty stringent series of checks and balances, right? And then one of that is the education verification. And that's where we come into play. And this is what we do here, right? And also institution accreditation, degree mills all over the place. They need to determine that, the institution issuing that accreditation is actually a legitimate one, right? So employment checks, again, all these are again part of due diligence, right? That we do on an individual perspective. Then again, identity checks, just so that you know exactly the person you're dealing with is who he or she says they are, right? Um, yeah, not to labor on too much. So just wanted to give you the perspective on the availability of checks as far as due diligence in our two platforms, right? And then, of course, I'll be more than happy to walk any one of you through a full-fledged demo, which will probably take about 30 minutes for us to run through exactly with you on what happens on our platform. We work with banks and so on, and we've got a bank in Singapore that has a dedicated instance for these platforms, right? Essentially because they're concerned about data mingling and so on and so forth. So we have that level of versatility to kind of customize our solution or our platform according to your needs. If you have any questions, again, please feel free to pop them in the Q&A. We'll be more than happy to answer them for you here.
So the important thing here is when you do a due diligence on, let's say, I'm going to give you a case example of a golf club, right? I think recently there was a bit of coverage on that. I think that's what Avans and myself got mentioned in the papers as well. Let's say you're talking about your members coming in. I think one of the clubs here, they charge about $330,000 for club membership. So very, very good target for money laundering, right? If I buy 10 memberships, 3.3 million already pumped in already, right? So how do you do the due diligence? So there could be corporate memberships, and then you could have individual coming in as well, right? In our case, I think the premise here is we will do both, because I think out there in the market, you either have people who do individual level background checks, and then you have companies who do corporate due diligence, but of course they don't have e-commerce platform like that. So I think our proposition here is we're marrying it together, so we can give a holistic solution. So for a corporate member, we would, if there's a company coming in, then that's what just now Xiang showed. You can do a corporate DD on the company itself, right? In terms of whether they are real, and the whole network, what are the interconnected companies they have in the entire the web of interconnections, and then the directors, whoever's going to be part of it, we can cover that as well. Then the individual memberships, people coming in, we also can do a DD on that, right? And it doesn't have to be, they could be from anywhere. Although I know that recently the press coverages always have been geared to one particular country, but honestly speaking, we see not just the country, we actually see issues from everywhere. So we will be able to do the individual level checks as well. But the only thing here you need to take note is when we do the individual level check, we do need to get the consent. Right? Very important. Otherwise, you will be potentially violating the data privacy, whichever country you're based in. So we need to do that. And then we'll be able to cover with the data privacy, the consent letters collected, the system actually collects all that. So it's all very highly automated. There's a lot of RPA workflows, AI chatbots working behind the scenes. So we'll do all of that. In fact, the social media check, for example, it covers very detailed social media footprint, plus Google as well. So you could have been negatively reported in the papers, it will come up. You could be tagged on by people. So the social media will also sort of the AI, right? The machine learning, it'll be able to, it's a mix of machine learning and deep learning. Deep learning because of your facial. So you'll be able to see images of where you got tagged in and all that. So you could be not directly doing something, but because you let auto tagging, you would have been tagged in with another person who's possibly quite fraudulent. Right. So that's why it's very important to have a network of, who we are friends with, right? And if you do not know who are you friends with, then please don't allow for auto tagging, because the social media tagging can actually divulge all that. So I always tell people, don't allow for auto tagging, because you can get pulled in for a lot of different things. And then it'll be able to, like, on Twitter, which is now called X, Facebook now called Meta, in LinkedIn, it could be, in TikTok, whatever it is, what this person does. I know there could be derogatory indicators relating to radicalism, could be sexual stuff, could be terrorism, could be violence. So all those things can pop up as well, because you also want to know maybe this company we're working with, or this member you're onboarding, or this person you're going to be tenanting for, if you're a property in the from the property agency. You can do all the basic things, but you also want to know what are the makeup of the person, the character, because also that's also very important now. If you are some of our banking customers, although the financial authorities or monetary authorities don't require them to do social media checks, but the banks have started doing it, because people are representing you as a brand ambassador out there. So, and social media has now become so important that it's inseparable. We are all of us spend time on it, whether it's LinkedIn or whatever it is, right? So we want to know what people are saying, what people are talking. So that's where that part comes in. So I think it's a very good holistic assessment, right? Individual level checks through Screen Global, and a company level checks through a corporate due diligence, or a company due diligence, CDD Global. Put together, you get a full assessment. There was also a couple of questions when you're registered. I think we did not address that, in terms of what types of checks to do on what. So that really depends on the scope that you're looking for. So obviously, under the corporate due diligence global, maybe see, I want to put up that screen again on this CDD global. It has many different types. So you may be like, do I do a basic KYB? Do I do a premium DD? What do I do? So I think the scope will give you some idea on what are the checks you need to do. But we will also potentially sit down with you to discuss your needs and then propose to you as well, if the scope is not very clear. So, for example, under basic KYB, what does it cover? Of course, when it gets more and more detailed, it gets more expensive as well. Advanced, your beneficial ownership's name. So your advanced know your business will cover the basic KYB plus those the below things as well mentioned here, right? Equity pledge, serious irregularity, abnormal operation, penalties these companies have been subjected to. So it gets pretty detailed. And you can see that, for example, for China, 88 US dollars gets you so much information, and you're talking about millions of dollars of damage being saved. So it's not an expensive exercise, right? We have sort of commoditized it a little bit for you, so it's easier. And the global watch list and sanction, you can do at an individual level, or you can do a company level as well. Then you got your basic CDD, very company level due diligence, right? And then you can go for standard, and then you can go for premium. So it gives you a coverage information. But if you're not clear what other checks need to be done, you can definitely consult us, and we'll be glad to help.
So we are essentially a pay as you use setup. So there are no setup fees. Signing up for an account is relatively simple, right? Just provide some company details and we're good to go. There are no minimal requirements. Of course, we're happy to have that discussion with you on preferential rates, right? All the rates that you see here on both CDD as well and Screen Global are our listed pricing. But we can take that offline and have a conversation with you and craft even packages, fixed packages for you also, that as a drop-down list that you can kind of select on both platforms as well.
And of course, the discount obviously depends on the volume of cases you're going to put through, whether it's individual level or corporate level. Based on that, we will give you the necessary discounts. If there are no additional questions, what we could potentially do for you is we have actually a document which talks through the whole thing we've talked about. The document gives you details on what other checks can be potentially done, how do you go about doing them, and all that. We will share that with you, along with a copy of the recording as well. If you want to email us at consult@avvanz.com, please feel free. The consultants will actually reach out to you immediately and help you out how to go about doing this. So it could be, again, the DD could be on anyone, could be any party, or it could be a internal background checks, or it could be a requirement of the company, or compliance requirement, or your industry requirement, whatever it is. Have an open dialogue with us, non-obligatory. If you want to do it yourself, also fine, but you want some advice, we can help you with that as well. The reason why companies typically outsource this is because of the liability involved, and the scope of the activity, because it can be very extensive. And I think you've already seen the cost is not very expensive. If you were to do it yourself, it can run into easily 5-6 figures. I think you can talk to some of the organizations, and you will understand why it can be a very, very laborious and even onerous activity. But in our case, because of the volume of work that we get, we are able to commoditize it to a certain extent, and we've also automated a lot of the work, which is why the price is very affordable. And we can sort of work out a best solution for you. So like what Xiang said, there's no upfront subscription. I mean, whatever you see is what you get, and the consultancy is free as well. If you have unlimited IDs and passwords for your team to go in and order, that's also there. So it's all very customizable, very build and go kind of system. And like what we mentioned earlier, you only build after the work is done, nothing before that. And with that, we'll end the webinar. Thank you very much, and have a great week ahead, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.